welcome to the first video for the Sheridan County Dog Project. Today we're going to go over leave it. Leave it means something you don't want the dog to have. So it could be a piece of food that you dropped on the ground, could be another dog that you don't want them to interact with, could be a person that you don't want them to visit. Also could mean a rabbit you don't want them to chase, or a squirrel, or something like that. Something you don't want the dog to ever have. So what you'll need for this is obviously a dog, and the dog will need to be on a leash, and you will need some treats or some food, something the dog wants to work for. First thing I do is how I teach leave it is I want the dog to love the words leave it. And in order for a dog to know what leave it is, and that leave it is a valuable set of words, you will need to what I call charge the words. So you ever had a dog that when you say the word treat and they're like, woohoo, I love that word, and they come to you and they get a treat? I want the words leave it to be just as valuable as the word treat. So that's kind of how we're going to do it, and I call it charging the words leave it. So the first step to this is we're going to charge the words leave it. We're going to put some about 6 pieces of food in our hand, just little pieces, nothing big, bite-sized pieces. Don't overdo it. You can actually make them work for their kibble also, but it's got to be something they want and something that they're willing to work for. So you're just going to put 6 pieces of food in your hand to start with. Then you're going to just say the words leave it, and you're going to give them a piece of food. If they don't see that piece of food, you might have to show them the piece of food and get them on track and give them that piece of food. Then you're going to say leave it again and give them a piece of food. You're going to say leave it again, give them a piece of food. Say that like a total of maybe 5 times with just saying leave it and shoving a piece of food in their face. And then maybe about the 6th time or so, you're going to distract them and move your feet maybe a little bit so the dog thinks you're going somewhere, and then but don't go very far, and just say the words leave it again. They should whip their head around and try to get that treat from you, and which is fine. I just want them reacting to the words leave it. When you say leave it, the dog should look at you to get some food at this point. We want to make it valuable. So if your dog isn't doing it by like 5 or 6 times, if you're saying leave it and your dog's still not whipping his head around to look at you to get that food, start back again with step 1 and do it again. Leave it, food. Leave it, food. Leave it, food. 4 or 5 times, let the dog get distracted, say it again. Leave it, dog should whip his head around to get that piece of food. By then, your dog should love the words leave it, because he's going to get a piece of food at this point. Not forever, but at this point we're just making it valuable. Step 3 is going to be you will go get your dog on a leash. Your dog will be on a leash. You're going to throw some food just right out of his range that he cannot get to. You're going to make sure the dog cannot get to it. You're going to have it there. You're going to say leave it, and your dog should whip around to you, because he knows that when you say leave it, he needs to look at you and get some food. Now he might look right back at that food again that's on the ground, so be prepared for that. The second he goes to try to get that food on the ground again, you're going to say leave it again, and they should whip their head back around to get that piece of food from you. Do that 2 or 3 times, and they usually, after about 3 or 4 times, they're not wanting to get that food that's out there, because they know something valuable is going to come from you instead. So once you're done with that, don't let your dog have that food that's on the ground. You're going to have somebody pick it up for you or take them away from it and put them somewhere else so that you can pick it up. So that's eventually how the leave it will work. When you say leave it, your dog will look away from whatever you want them to leave alone. And at first, you are going to be the one that makes those words valuable by giving them food. So that's how it's going to work. I'm going to go get my dog, and I will show you how I'm going to do it with my dog. So now we're going to go over the leave it, and she's done this before, so she's going to be totally different than your dogs. But how we're going to do it is we're just going to start with step one and say leave it and give her a piece of food. Leave it, leave it, leave it, leave it, leave it. Now I'm going to distract her, see if she'll look away, leave it, and now she's already looked at me when I said leave it, and I'm going to give her another piece of food. So I can do that again. Maybe. Leave it. Well, your dogs will probably look away, but she's not going to. So the next step is going to be I'm going to throw the food that I don't want her to have. This is actually what she's going to leave. She's going to try to get it, so I'm just going to hold her back from it. Leave it. And then say leave it. She'll look back at me. Leave it. Looking back at me again. Leave it. Yes. Good girl. Leave it. Yes. Good girl. Oops. Right here. Good. Okay. So that's basically what I want your dog to do. When you say leave it, I want your dog to look at you and you're going to give him a piece of food. When you tell him to leave that alone, I don't want him to ever have it. So I'm going to pick that up, and she won't get it. Okay, and that's it. So you saw Rue in action. She loves to train. Your dogs might not be as excited as she is, but go ahead and give those 3 steps a try. Your dog, by the end of the 3 steps, should love the words leave it. And so it just, all it is just creating value in those words. So one thing I want you to be aware of is try, when you say leave it, try to only say it one time, especially when you get to like the step 2 or step 3. Try to make sure you're only going to say it one time. If your dog does not react immediately, don't say leave it again really fast. Just say leave it and wait for a reaction. So try to only say the cue one time once you get past step 1. You'll say it one time. If the dog does not react to it immediately, give him some time, like maybe 4 seconds. If he doesn't react within 4 or 5 seconds, then say it again. So try not to repeat the cue. Try to only say it one time. I can't say that enough because I see it all the time in my classes. Another tip is try to not let the dog look at something for longer than 2 seconds. So once your dog looks at something and can watch something for longer than 2 seconds, he's most likely not going to leave it alone. So if you're asking your dog to leave something alone, try to get it the instant they see it. So when he sees a dog, leave it. When he sees a rabbit, leave it. When he sees a piece of food you don't want him to have, leave it. Try to say it immediately upon when the dog sees it. If your dog looks at something for longer than 2 seconds, remember that their brain kind of shuts off and they're going to just kind of go into that stare mode, and we don't want that. So once your dog is responding to the leave it while you're standing still, holding their leash, and throwing a piece of food outside of their range, I want you to try to add motion to it. So walk by something that you want them to leave alone, make sure your dog is on a leash, and say the words, leave it. Your dog should whip his head back up around to you and give him a piece of food for that. So basically anytime your dog listens to you when you say leave it and looks at you, give them something for it. If you don't have food immediately available, give them praise. Do something about it. Acknowledge that that dog is listening to the words leave it. Don't practice this for very long either. So try to only do like 8 or 10 leave-its, or 8 or 12 leave-its. So just make it short, sweet, fun training is what we want. We don't want to pound it into them and drill it into their heads and make it this huge long training session. We want it to be short and fun. This cue is used for anything you want your dog to leave alone. So if we ever get to have in our group classes, you could use it when you're coming in the door and your dog looks at another dog. You could say leave it, and your dog should leave those other dogs alone. Same thing with people. The upper level people use it for food distractions, because in the upper levels, especially in rally, they're going to put a bowl of food out for those dogs to actually have to leave alone. So there's a big use for it. Pretty much any distraction you want your dog to leave alone and not look at and pay back attention to you. And I think that's all I got. So happy training, and we'll get another video together for you later this week. Bye.